What's down, people, and welcome back to another episode of Ghetto Gospel. So where we left off at. Last week, we talked about Jacob leaving Bethel, that mean the house of God, and heading down south to where his pops was staying at. While he was on the road leaving Bethel, aka the house of God, the wife he loved died. And to make matters worse, his oldest son smashed his side wife. And when he finally made it to the city where his pops was staying at, his pops died. At least he got to be there for the services. And now we caught up. So this chapter a little different from most of what we done read up to this point. One thing you gotta remember about the Bible is that even though it's all these dramatic stories in here about what happened to these folks, this ain't a storybook. A lot of folks will disagree with that, but you know what's great about having my own channel? I ain't gotta argue with nobody. You know how you used to be bored out of your mind in history class when they was talking about all of these dates and these folks who died buku long ago? Yeah, that's kind of how this chapter is. It start off telling you that this the family records of Esau. That's Jacob, brother. And before I get into this, if you really want to know what that man family tree look like, here it is right here. I'll put a link to it down there. But if you like me, you probably wondering why this boring list of names of who had kids with who and who was whose daddy even matter. Well, if it don't tell you nothing else, this chapter ought to remind you that this ain't just a myth or a storybook. Nobody who was trying to write something interesting would have ever put this kind of stuff up in it. Another thing is, later on in this book, some of these names gonna start to pop up again when they start talking about the stuff these folks was doing. You gotta remember that nobody up in here was just living on their own planet. Folks were spreading out and crossing paths all the time, so it's good to have a record of where folks came from, who they people is, and how they live. If it wasn't for family records, nobody would remember that this dude,
illegal aliens,
grandparents was immigrants. That ain't but 2 generations ago. Tex-Mex more American than the Trump family. French fries more American than the Trump family. Racism more Anyway, the point is, I'm sure y'all done heard that old saying, if you don't know where you came from, you can't know where you're going. And knowing about the history of the folks in this book will help you understand what's going on with their descendants today. This ain't the last chapter we gonna come across like this. And when we see them in the future, I'm just gonna give y'all a little rundown like I did this time, and a map like the one at the beginning of this video, unless it's something real important to point out. So before I start getting hate mail, let me address this right here. Do I believe God chose Israel for a specific purpose? Yep. Do I believe he did that because they his favorites? Nope. Do I believe that Israel always right and they'll never do nothing evil? Bruh, if I believe that, I have to throw most of this book away. One of the biggest themes in here is how God chose these folks and there wasn't nothing special about them. And they keep screwing up and God don't give up on them. If you don't take nothing else from this, I hope you get the fact that that's who God is and how he operates. So that's it for this week. If you don't know Jesus, but you're trying to get to know him, go and click that first link in the description down there. I'll see y'all next week, and as always, peace, and I hope y'all people straight.